A train lost in a tunnel was never found again. Imagine traveling on a train that is actually a time machine that would never bring you back. The 106 passengers and crew of the Zanetti train probably would have thought twice before they embarked on their adventure, had they known that. Just like the passengers of the Titanic, which set off for its first and last cruise almost a year later, they never reached their destination. The difference, though, is that no one knows what happened to the train. On July 14, 1911, the rail company Zanetti offered well-off Italians a free trial ride on their new train. The passengers were enjoying their ride, watching scenic views along the way, making small talk, and enjoying their refreshments. One of the sights they were looking forward to was a new tunnel that went through a mountain. It was one of the longest ever built at the time. And that's where the mystery begins. In Lombardy Mountain's half-mile-long tunnel, the train entered but never emerged. Following the event, police and railroad employees thoroughly scoured the area but were unable to locate the train. Simply put, the tunnel was a long tube. There was no other option except to get over, yet there was no train and no indication that a crash had occurred. However, there were 2 passengers found who jumped off the train just before it vanished into the tunnel. Later, when they came to, they were able to tell the story of their eerie trip. As the train approached the tunnel, black smoke came out of nowhere as well as a dense white fog. The train slowed down as it was nearing the entrance, and the fog began to envelop it. For a while, the injured men had problems sleeping and experienced other stress-related ailments. The train, on the other hand, was never seen again. As word of the tunnel spread, authorities decided it would be best to close it. The infamous tunnel was then permanently sealed off after a WW2 ambush. No one could come up with a sound explanation for this strange disappearance. Dozens had witnessed the train leaving the station in Rome and entering the tunnel, but nobody saw it come out. But that's not the last time we'd hear about the mysterious train. There are records of medieval monks from Modena who saw a 3-car train with people in it. How could they conceive a huge iron machine puffing clouds of black smoke? A horse was the fastest means of transport at the time. Railroads hadn't been invented yet. Well, they thought it, along with the passengers who they described were clean-shaven and dressed in black. All must be the work of some evil forces. You can say that medieval monks made it up, but here's the thing, their report was kept in the records of Castus Olea, stored by the Sagino family. And one of the survivors of the train had the name Sagino. Then, in the 1840s, there's a report that the Zanetti passengers were seen in Mexico. A psychiatrist in a local hospital left notes saying that a group of 104 Italians were admitted all in a hysterical state. They were all dressed in strange clothes, obviously from a different place, and claimed they were traveling from Rome by a Zanetti train. One of the passengers actually had a cigarette box with a future date 1907 on it. They say it is still kept in a Mexican museum. The psychiatrist concluded that it was a case of mass insanity, but he failed to come up with any explanation for it. There are no records left of the patients after that. Many years later, the train appeared again in Europe. On October 29, 1955, a 3-car old-fashioned train appeared not far from Zavalaichi, a small village in Ukraine. The signalman, Pyotr Ustimenko, saw it moving soundlessly. He reported that he'd been on duty that night and suddenly saw a train that wasn't on the schedule. The train was heading without tracks to Gasfort Mountain. He thought he was seeing things and rubbed his eyes, but there it was, with shut curtains, open doors, and an empty driver's cabin. Ustimenko had never seen a train like that before, but he knew it was old, definitely a pre-conflict model. The description he gave was the same as that of the Zanetti. It's unlikely a signalman from a remote town in the USSR would know anything about an Italian train lost at the beginning of the 20th century. Another interesting note about this sighting is that at the end of the 19th century, there was an Italian cemetery built on Gasfort Mountain near Sevastopol. About 2,000 Italian soldiers who passed away during the Crimean conflict were buried there. Later, a railroad from Balaclava was constructed over the former cemetery, but then was destroyed after the revolution of 1917 because it was no longer used. Was the ghost train riding on ghost tracks to meet its Italian brethren? And, again, this wasn't the last account of the train appearing. As crazy as all this sounds, could there be a scientific explanation of the ghost train adventures? Some believe all the railroads in the world form a sort of connected web that has its own magnetic field. The trains serve as electric conductors between the Earth's natural magnetic field and the artificial one. The conflict between the two forces creates fractures in time with endless holes. This explanation is based on Einstein's theory of relativity and Minkowski's definition of distance. These fractures are called coronal holes. Sometime before the Zanetti train left the station, there had been an earthquake where the tracks were. It's believed the crust fracture, which appeared under Lombardy Mountain, created a time anomaly at the entrance to the tunnel. The train became the link necessary to dig through time and space, and it fell from its time vector where it belonged and could move to other times. So, in layman's terms, it was traveling through time. It got so popular that some paranormal enthusiasts devoted years to finding proof of the Zanetti train's existence. As time went on, more names and details were added to the legend. However, if you try to look up the rail company Zanetti, Castasolea, the Saggino family, or a signalman named Piotr Ustimenko, you'll only find links to different versions of this legend.